but also recognize when these archetypes are showing up, what is it there to teach us? Because archetypes in the collective are some of the biggest guides. And today I'm going to be talking about the guide archetype and how the guide archetype can show up in our life and a purpose, also in the collective, and how often the guide archetype also transitions and changes throughout our life as we evolve and we awaken, to certain things, and we become more conscious about things, we spiritually evolve, and we evolve through our life challenges. So this morning, I don't really use oracle cards or anything that very much anymore for a lot of reasons. But I felt guided. I'm someone who is very visual, and often imagery and things tend to inspire and help me basically share certain insights. It helps me give me kind of more focus and clarity. And what I done was I took a couple of cards out of Collect Bands cards. I also took an archetype card. I just decided just to pick what came out, and it was the guide archetype. I'm going to really focus mostly on the guide archetype, but I'm going to share some of the things that also come up within the two cards that actually relate to this. So let's look at the guide archetype in relation to kind of like Miss cards. And the only reason I use Carlines is they're quite simple to understand, the cards I'm familiar with. But let's just look. I'm going to share the guide archetype card. And we're going to just share what she describes as the guide archetype in relation to the light attribute and the shadow attribute. So if we look at the guide archetype in its light aspect, it represents the nature of the divine in life and in yourself. And you can make, that as God, right? God in your life, God in yourself, the spirit of life, and that's, it's within us, but also the spirit of life that is in everything that is around us. Now, in the shadow attribute, it is when people or something plays financial gain and control over impacting spiritual insight. So they basically put money and power and control in many ways over sharing. And when, obviously one of the things that I do is I help many people that feel called to work in the holistic and healing, or what we call spiritual sector. And that can come with a lot of challenges. Sometimes people face people who believe that people shouldn't be charging for anything that they do in relation to the work. But for what I know from me personally, and most of the people that I tend to work with, they tend to be very experienced. They've often dedicated their life and made huge sacrifices in their life to be of service, to do the work that they didn't do it for the money. And many times they have to get that balance right, because to sustain their business and to be strong and healthy, and they are entitled to have a healthy, empowered life, a life that they can take care of their family and their well-being. But it can be very hard when they're attracted, or they have beliefs within themselves that there may be conflict around the value of being able to get an exchange and a monetary gain, for things that they do and things that they invest. But also I've saw this at an increasing rate. I saw it started to really ramp up when it started 20 years. The last 10 years, in particular, the last 5 years, there's such an increase in people moving into these industries just about the money, and almost saying anything, selling anything, and not having integrity and ethics at the core. It's just about getting them to escape from their own life and put themselves as a guru or whatever. And we can see this manipulation of power and just about myth. And we see that, and it happens in every area of life. And so these are, more, this is an aspect of the shadow, and its light form. It is the ability to be guided by nature, to be guided by spirit, to be guided by life, to be guided within, and also at times be supported and guided by other people. Now, I do believe that we're moving into a really important lesson on earth, that we are being taught to go more inward and to learn how to guide ourselves in many ways and listen to our inner compass. But that does not mean that we have to do it alone, and that we don't maybe get extra help or support, and maybe sometimes guidance from other people that have walked certain aspects of the path, or that they can share, right? And if you think about someone as a guide can be someone that shows you places and takes you along certain paths, but they're allowing you the freedom to choose to go, and you may go along the path with them, but that does not mean that you do everything on the path that they tell you to do on the path. It's like being a guide. If you think a travel guide can take and help you explore different avenues, and also can maybe give you guidance of where, well, maybe if you have to be really careful, you're going along this path, been along this path before, this can be a bit rocky, there's a better path if you go along this way, there's that element. And I do believe that right now we are being called on so many levels to go inward. But the reality is that I do notice, I do work with a lot of what you would call people are very, very empathic and sensitive, and they tend to be more intuitive. But what I've saw over the last, for example, 5 years is there's been so much chaos and confusion, a lot of manipulation in the media, a lot of things in the world that are all about programming and conditioning, having us believe certain things, showing us clips of certain things, maybe not showing us the background or sharing the full truth and manipulating. So we're getting that, and a lot of people are waking up to that. But within that, even being very empathic, very sensitive and intuitive, we all can have areas where we are blunted. That's just life. And the blinkers come in the areas that we have wounding, the areas that we've had trauma. And, one of the things that I see is I meet a lot of people with absolutely amazing gifts. They don't really see them as gifts sometimes because it's so innate and it's just so natural and it's part of them. I also meet other people who are very, very blocked, but they're in such resistance, they can become very rebellious, or they hold a lot of anger or frustration, and because they're so blocked, and there can be lots of reasons why they're so blocked, and they're blocking themselves from the gifts, and they're blocking themselves from intuition. And if we look at the last 5 years, what's rapidly changed and rapidly increased is this more and more people wanting to move in, to become more spiritual, want to become more, feel as if they're intuitive, feel as if they have their own guidance, but they're struggling. They're struggling at such a level, right? And there can be lots of reasons for this, but it can start if we look at where our own inner guidance is blocked, right? And if we think about it as a practical level, right, when you're a child, if you are not taught to be independent and you're not taught to be able to do certain things yourself, you never learn to go and do things yourself, and you never learn how to go along certain paths. Right? I remember as a child, I was a very fearful child, but I was also the eldest of nine. So there was a lot of kind of pressure in some aspects, particularly when we were young. And it was like this timorous, fearful child, being scared of the shadow, but also having to take responsibility. So in some things, my mum taught me to be very practical about some things. And um, there was aspects of that. It was almost like I was a little kind of robot. Like we all do, we follow what we're taught and what to do. I was also quite an emotional person, but I didn't understand what was going on. I was always told I was too sensitive. I was also told I was very immature. I was very overwhelmed by lots of things, and it was because I was so empathic and so sensitive, but I didn't really understand it. And like most parents, most situations in life, you know, we're all navigating, we're all trying to navigate the path. We're trying to use our own inner experience and inner guidance. Sometimes that's clear, sometimes it's not, but we're also, our old programming comes in, and sometimes we don't know what to do, and sometimes we do things better than others. And one of the great advantages that I had, that my father was very encouraged us to be intuitive. My mum was encouraged us to be creative, and she had, she was more sensitive, and my dad was quite sensitive as well. It was just not always maybe as visible in some ways, but that helped me, despite being so empathic and sensitive, still tap in to what was my inner guidance. To the degree that I remember, and there's a reason that I'm not just going on about myself, there is a reason, because a lot of people, I think, can relate to that or realise where there's been blockages in their childhood or certain paths of their life cycle. But I remember when I was a teenager and I became, maybe not a terrible teenager, but it was this newfound freedom, which my parents struggled with, but it was like something within me just wanted to escape. And being quite creative, and actually taking, as very young, I went down into and went to fashion college. And even though it was actually my mum that wanted to go down that road, and she encouraged me, I didn't really know what I was wanting to do. And even though I had some challenges, and that's another story in some of those areas, it gave me a freedom to express myself. And in some ways, there was some aspect of it that was beautiful, but some of it was challenging. Some of it was insane. Some of the things that I wore and I dressed like were actually not laugh. I can look back and I can really laugh. And there's a film I'm thinking about, and I can't remember the film, and it is an English film. It's quite, I think it was quite one of those heartbreaking films, but I remember the girl had the bumblebee tights. I had bumblebee leggings, and some people, more older people, would make jokes of some of the things I was wearing because it was just so wacky. But it was like my soul needed that freedom to find its own way, and I felt like it's free a bird. But I remember it, a neighbour, and it was a kind of a friend of mine's mother, a boy that kind of in the street that sometimes we all went about, and his mother used to come out, and she said I inspired her, and I inspired her because she loved watching me walk down and see what I was wearing. And there was something within my soul that was guiding me to express myself. And I think being at certain times of my life, I could be a little chatterbox sometimes, but sometimes was very introverted and shy. And it was giving me, my soul, a chance to explore. I think lots of people don't have that opportunity to really explore themselves and really shine and guide. It's like they've not ever experienced that where their soul is guiding them. Now, I made a lot of decisions from a very heart-based, I wasn't logical that way. And being so extremely sensitive and empathic, I picked up so much of other people, but I didn't even notice it because it was such an integral part of me. I actually thought everyone was the same, but it was overwhelming for me. But for probably my mental health and my mental resilience, I knew very quickly when something wasn't right for me and I would move on. And, I came from a family business background where you work really, really hard, and it wasn't just, sometimes people think when, family business, it's just about making money and being real successful. It wasn't really that. It was, my father was someone who had a lot of integrity and he wanted to create things, and he was passionate about creating something that would help, um, like it was a purpose, and the thing that he created he felt was real value to society. So it wasn't just about making money or anything like that. And also he wanted to be able to live on his terms and be able to do things ethically and do it the way he wanted to do it. So often, sometimes people have this thing that sometimes people create businesses just to for make money, but lots of people do it for lots of reasons, and often people are doing it because their soul wants to be able to do things in a way that they feel empowered, but they're doing something that they maybe think is needed and it has a drive. And that can sustain a sort of power, but also even in children. So there was times when we were pretty younger, it was very hard. Part of being a family business, you all work together and you do certain things. And that gave me a lot of, so that was a life experience that was guidance about life, that not all of life is always plain sailing, that not all of life comes, it helps me see that sometimes there's the light and the shadow to things that people can't see. So that helped me and all my siblings have not a naive perspective of the working life and what it takes to do certain things. Now, there may be some shadow elements of that, because sometimes I think the element of hard working was sometimes maybe to an unhealthy degree. But I still believe that I had parents that had a lot of integrity and tenacity. And that was the guide. They guided us as children, just like your parents would guide you in some things. You think you might think I'm not being good guidance, some things may be useful guidance. But we all bring life experience as a guide, and we learn from things that are not so healthy, just like the things that were really healthy, right? Now, if you feel as if you play a part, that you're a guide, you have a part to play as a guide in your work, you're often guiding people in areas of where you maybe had challenges, right? And that you can support people. And a guide is not about forcing an opinion down someone's throat or saying this is the only way or this is completely, I'm 100% true in everything. And even though we can get, we all have opinions, I have my opinions just like everyone else, the guide is guiding, and it's almost like someone along the journey with someone else. And I meet a lot of healers that are actually guides. So instead of being more a teacher, they're a guide, and sometimes they're the mentor. But the guide can often help someone explore, right? And the guide can take something. So what they're kind of doing is sometimes often introducing someone to maybe a subject or an idea, a place. If you think about again, the guide where someone's traveling is a guide. It takes you on an adventure. A guide is that, and that guide is parting maybe things that they've learned or what they think is what they've experienced or what they believe that they're coming from. It's more a kind of, I sometimes see patterns in the way that I relate to things. I see them as energy, and I can often see things. I see music visually. And when I see the guide archetype, it's almost like someone being on your energy field and they're to the side, And their head is that they're walking, they have that energy, they're walking along the path. They're not too evasive. They're not trying to get in someone's space or someone's head, but they're saying, well, this is what I do, and this is what I, and they're saying it from that non, it's just, I don't even know if the word is gentle. They have a soft, but it's like there's a boundary there to it, right? They're not trying to force anything, so they are. There's some guides that I can think of right now that are actually more slightly introverted, so they're not in people's energy. They're not trying to force anything, and that's life. If you think about what nature is and flow, nature is not in your face. Of course, there can be things that stick out in nature and we're more attracted to nature, but nature is just nature. Nature, it has a state of flow and things change and whatever. It's not about forcing anything, right? And I think that even though we're in a time in right now in the collective where lots of things maybe feel as if they're forced, there's a lot of the disruptor and the destroyer archetype happening, and people are horrified and people have a certain perception. My belief through lots of things that I've saw and lots of things that seem to be hidden to, particularly some countries don't even realise they're getting really censored, they're not seeing lots of things, or some people only watch certain channels or certain information, so they're on certain things, so they can't maybe see the bigger picture. But the destroyer and the disruptor, for example, is a powerful archetype. And we might think the destroyer and the disruptor is all about evil or bad, or the bully or the rebel or whatever. But sometimes the disruptor and the destroyer is there to destroy what is hidden, destroy what people don't want to see, destroy and get rid of things that need to be get rid of. Right. And sometimes we have circumstances in our life that has that disruptor, a destroyer archetype, right? And we'll go back to that in relation to the guide in a minute, but I think about circumstances that happened to me and it felt like certain things were destroyed and like my whole life was disrupted and it didn't suit me. I didn't want it. It felt chaotic. It felt like things were ripped away from me. It felt unjust. It felt unfair. But what I was doing, I was holding on to the ego or holding on to what I thought was important to me. And if we look at life, often sometimes we get really angry or annoyed when we think something's unfair and it's impacting us, but sometimes we don't recognize that thing that's happened has happened for a bigger reason and lots of more people are involved. And actually the loss that we have at that time is so that the balance comes back for other people, that things are even worse or we don't see the bigger picture. We also don't understand that sometimes things in our life have to be destroyed or disrupted or taken away, because if not, we would hang on to it because we don't know anything else. If you think about a child, let's think about this. This is, not a nice circumstances, but it happens to many children. Children that get really badly abused. Children that are in really abusive relationships. And if you look at the current system, it's very hard. They sometimes don't really know what to do because often, the last thing a child wants to do is be ripped from their parents, even when they are violent and abusive. But, the system, even no matter if you like it, if you think it's good, bad, or indifferent, there is always a situation where people have to make a decision in cases where children have some sort of type of abuse. What level of abuse, because there's, sorts of mental, emotional, physical abuse, what level does it get when you remove the child from that situation where they end up there, even something worse is going to happen? Or when do certain things, because taking the child away would be more damaging, where it might be just emotional neglect or mental neglect. There's all different levels to that. And we see this sometimes when people have addictions, and we see this in alcohol, drug addictions, and things like that. And I've seen this a lot where people are on self-destruct, and their own self, and we can all be in self-destruct in different ways, but that can sometimes just be more obvious. I see it in gambling and things, where people are in such self-destruct, and they're in self-destruct, but they're also destroying everybody around about them, but they're in such wounding. And sometimes they're stuck in so much their own suffering and their own pain. They cannot see the other pain that they're causing other people. They can't see the damage. And sometimes then they do see what they're doing. And it becomes such a hole of they don't know what to do. They just can't settle out. And it's not till something else happens that may destroy their life, maybe something really terrible, then changes and pivots the path, right? And in my line of work, most of the people that come into the healing holistic world, the spiritual world, are wounded healers who have been wounded themselves. Right? And they become guides for other people. But the reality is, we can't be guides for people when we've not walked certain paths. So it's understanding that part of the light attribute of the guide is being in truth and authenticity and transparency, right? The shadow element is recognizing in a guide where you're just doing it for not from authenticity. You're doing it just to make a monetary. There's no, there's not a depth behind it. You've not really walked the talk. You've not really experienced that. You maybe don't understand what a particular client's dealing with. You're not really qualified maybe to help a certain type of person, and you're doing it to control someone, or you're doing it to control, for something else, to control other things in your life. But that's where the shadow element come out. And it can be a fine line. I know, and I've talked about this, a lot, is that in my own path, I met absolutely extraordinary guides and teachers. I've met so many people that I'm so honoured that there's one man that I've felt really a lot of gratitude more and more recently, even though I always was grateful from him. And he was one of the first men that introduced me to, it was Cameron Cunningham. And we're talking about, I think it was about 1991, 1990, I think. It was approximately that time. And at that time, I didn't really know what was going on. My health had deteriorated so much, and it was overwhelming. I had so many things that the medical professions that they didn't know what to do. And I was very into doing relaxation and creative visualization, but some things were working for some things. And some things just, no matter what I did and how much tried I had, and I've done my daily affirmations, I've done hours of meditation, lots of things, some things just weren't hitting. And it was another healer who was a powerful healer who had a phenomenal, you would call people, amount of people who were evidence of his gift. He had a tremendous gift. He recognised that there was even things that he felt he couldn't help me with, and it was actually his partner at the time that suggested I go to see Carmen. And this man, when I came in, I don't know what it was. I think I was very lucky. A lot of healers that I met as young told me that I was going, and they said that I was a natural healer, and I didn't really understand what that meant. I'll be honest at that point. And I was like a sponge, but it wasn't just that I was a sponge. They were guides, they were also teachers, and they shared things, why they did what they did, and as they did things for me to help me, they explained what they were doing, and they really educated me, and I learned more probably in those situations than what I did even in some of my own learning. I learned from these people, and I'm so grateful. So many of the therapists, and there's lots of therapists. I've also got a friend, my own friend, one of my closest friends in the world, David. David has always been a mentor and a guide for me. When he came into my life, it was a time I was going through the most extreme challenges. And I really believe at that point, my health again had deteriorated to such a extent. And it was someone that came in with some insight and other ways of looking at things, and had worked with other teachers that I'd have loved to work with, but just to do my circumstances didn't come in and shared that. Also, a friend who's been a local therapist for many years, Irene Smith, who we could talk about things, and she approached my and helped me in my journey from an open perspective, not as if she knew everything. And also guided me and helped support me in times where I just need a little bit of extra guidance. So people are placed in a path to be the guides, and sometimes they come in disguises, like we talk about the angels. There's earth angels, and sometimes it's an angel in disguise. Sometimes people are guides in disguise. They may not have the guide, they might not see themselves as guides, but actually they are a guide, or they guide you towards something. Right? You don't have to have the title of guide to be a guide, right? But many of you will know, as I'm talking about this, that that's part of the role, right? And at the moment people need the guide that helps guide people towards finding their own answers in a lot of things. So giving them space and being like the one I said, like along the path, but giving the person enough space that they find themselves. One of the things that I notice as an empath, and I have noticed that a lot of people are getting a bit better at this, is that I've noticed a lot of healers, and I found it really harsh. I would find people always want to help me, but it was they were in your energy fields. They were trying to force their opinion. Maybe so passionate about what they did, also opinionated about that there was the tool or technique was the best, or they were so wanting to push and focus on what they love or what their business is built in, that it was coming from an energy of more pushing, like almost pushing the energy, pushing their opinion. And there is a difference now. We can all do it, right? And some of you might think that I do that, and that, we're all. But what I'm saying is, I found it to such a hard degree. It was almost like people really pushing in, and I had lots of experiences. I know a lot of our healers have that, where actually they've also had terrible experiences where suddenly you actually find someone is in your energetic field. And I have talked about this in one of my videos, where I had a situation one night and I woke up and I was shocked. This was someone that I had never worked with, and I wouldn't work with. But I knew this person had found something out about me just through a friend. And this person was actually in my energy field trying to do things where she had no place in. And that was an invasion. And it's, this is where sometimes some of the healing modalities that they're taught, a lot of sometimes the older and more big, that people go for beginner levels. People sometimes send healing and do things and they don't always get permission, and they do things that are actually more about the ego, right? Where the guide is coming from that space. It's flow, it's nature, it's not you're trying to control or manipulate a situation. It's trusting that, there's a difference between being guided and it comes in a flow, gentle way, and the mind thinking you need to help, you need to rescue, you need to do that. And when we're going within, right, when we go within and learn to go within in our life and be the guides in our own life, it's a path. The more that we do, that we start to recognize the subtle differences when something feels natural, something feels in resistance, and once something's more trying to force. I've got a situation, I've had a situation in my business. There's a lot of things happened the last couple of years, and just there were challenging things. There were things that didn't need to happen. But I'd also a situation where, of course, for a lot of reasons, I felt I needed to put that out this year. and just to do with students doing another course. But even though I was putting it out, I put it out at the beginning of the year and I was like kind of going, I'm doing this, and I was starting to doubt myself. I had a lot, and I had some neurological challenges that was meaning that I was not as cognitively clear. And I did that, and then I decided to put it out again, but I still wasn't 100% sure, I have to be honest, but I felt that it was almost unobliged. I felt obliged, and also didn't want to let certain students down. I felt it was almost kind of, I'm not quite getting the word at the moment, but I know what I kind of make myself. But it was almost like I felt that, I really should be doing this, right? But I also knew that in my heart and soul, there was resistance, there was a bit of sadness, because there was other reasons that I felt I wanted to do it, but it didn't feel right. And the guidance wasn't flowing, so it didn't feel authentic, and I was questioning myself. But the more that sometimes we don't get it perfect, and sometimes we're so close to the situation, we start analysing it, and I'm wondering, but my wounding all around having to finish things and always not letting people down, and making sure that I was keeping people, okay, realised that I was not listening to the universal guidance and the guidance, and that certain things were not at the right time. It wasn't right for me and also the collective. And I kind of knew and also on an analytical, there was lots of reasons why it might not be a good idea. And this is an example of where we all have things where sometimes it's someone else will help guide us and keep us right, because we cannot see, what we can notice some things, but sometimes in that process of refining our discernment, refining our inner guidance, that someone else can see when the wounding, where our conditioning, our programming is taking us off track. So we need the guide within, and we all need the guide externally. And if you think about even God is within, but God is in the universe, and synchronicities are divine guidance. Synchronicities are the signs that are guiding us towards wherever we need to go. And I want to share a few things that might help you in relation to sometimes why synchronicities are not always what we want to see. And because what we want to see is not shown up the way that we want it, and it's actually there's something else that we don't want to see. I remember I worked many, many years ago in a counselling organisation, and there was lots of things going on. It was multifaceted, and there was really good things going on in that organisation, but there was other things that kind of got out of hand. And I remember feeling as if I was in a situation and I felt I couldn't win no matter what the situation. There was things that were ethically, and my integrity did not feel right. It was not what I was doing, it was what a couple of other people were doing. But there was other things in that organisation that I was thriving at, and I was really being able to help people in a way that I couldn't always do in my own work, because these were people that could never have afforded what I did, and I always overgave in my work. And this was me able to make a big difference in certain things and do things, and also help the organisation in different ways. But things were off, and I remember I was starting to make my health was starting to deteriorate, and every time I started going to the place, my car would break down. All sorts of things would happen. And I remember one day, it was insane what happened. I fell, I hurt my leg, I twisted my ankle. The car broke down, and there was something else. It was like, but there was me still trying to get to this place, right? And this went on for 4 weeks, the insanity of when I went, right? And then I remember, even though that one of the people that worked in that organisation, she really wanted to keep me for lots of reasons. I could do lots of other tasks that lots of people who were older in the place. So I was really computer savvy compared to everyone in the building. And I could do lots of things for them where there was lacking skills, right? And so it suited them. They didn't really want to lose me. But I was getting in, and it was like, it was this feeling of back and forth. The universe was telling me to get out. And I was nearly broken. And then I went to a kinesiologist for a session, and I was blown away when she tested. And one of the things kinesiology is fantastic about, it can tell, for example, even like health things. Is it a physical? Is it electrical? Is it, they do all these kind of things, like, is it spiritual? Is it, so the check-in, is it like a toxin you're exposed to? So it gives, it can tap into what is the main thing that is causing the problem for me. And right away, she says, you feel your ethics and your integrity is being compromised. And she says, it's like as if it's literally killing me. And I'm like, oh my God, right? And also she explained that the patterns of my hours were not good for my health, to do the way I needed rest, for my body. And it'd been interesting. I always had certain patterns that I went with, but I always find people would try and say to me, no, that, and try and manipulate and say, no, you're just doing that because it's a habit. That's a bad habit. But I kind of knew that that worked for me. And she then said to me, it's telling me that during these times, these are rest periods, and you should have healthy boundaries around this, and you're not working in alignment with your own body and your health. And she was a great guide that day, right? But I had so many blocks and so much shame around me being unwell. I also had so much baggage about not letting people down, and felt, tone that we can all do, that I couldn't see the wood for the trees. And also it didn't suit me. I didn't actually want to see some of the things that was going on in there, because I had to face that people that I really liked were also doing things that were unethical and wrong. And a part of my naivety, there were certain things I didn't want to see and I didn't want to look at. And we can all be like that, right? So part of the guide archetype, what is going within, is actually being able to look even the shadow within ourselves, right? Is looking at even things that we're not maybe want to face and not to look at, and things that the universe is trying to guide us that we don't want to face. Because, for example, also at that time, I had lived most of my life in absolute financial dire straits. I had, been on the poverty line for most of my life, and this job had given me some security, because even though I had my business, it wasn't a lot of hours, and I was actually doing double hours. I actually had a guaranteed income. And there was also other things went on. And so I was focusing on some things that were not right. And this is where sometimes the guide archetype is about us focusing on, even in a business, where are we just focusing on the money? Where are we focusing on the control or the ego for an identity that we think we're more important, or that we should have a certain title or be seen a certain way? We're only doing it for power, for control, for ego, for security, or monetary gain. And I know that, there's a fine balance. Where are we doing things to actually be of service right now, and do things with integrity and guidance, and share wisdom, share knowledge that can really help people, share things that are going to be valuable, and also one of the things I think as well is where we maybe have done things wrong. Maybe we're too scared to say that, our guidance was not right, or we were going down, or maybe we couldn't see things. It's a bit of humble pie, because a good guide knows it makes mistakes. Like a travel guide might, take people along a certain path and think, oh no, there's a better way, or maybe things happen, and maybe someone gets injured or something, thinks, so that was my fault, I made a mistake. That's life, right? We all do things like that. So even going within, one of the things that I see in the New Age community, there is so many things that are taught in the New Age community that is absolutely mind-blowing. Now, a lot of people might think because I'm a healer, I'm automatically New Age. I'm actually not. So many things I believe are of the dark and are painted and mixed up and made to appear as if they're from the light. I think there's so much of lack of discernment, and that's a constant fine-tuning even for myself, right? But I've learned the hard way along the path, not to just let anyone in my energy field, not just to learn anything, and to be more discerning with the teachers that I work with and people that can, people talk about as long as something's from positive at 10. And I don't really believe that, because just because you mean well, people can mean well and they give people poison or something that's really dangerous for them. It's discernment, it's wisdom. And part of going through the stages of your own inner guidance, part of going through your own life cycle, part of the guide archetype is moving through the different archetypes that are guides. And I'm just going to share some of that out of Caroline Mrs. cards, right? So I'll give you an example. So if we look at the guru, the sage, the crone, the wise woman, the spiritual master, the evangelist, the preacher, right? Now, no one becomes a guide or a sage unless they have deep wisdom, deep spiritual practice, right? And went through a certain path. I'm not going to go to someone who says they're a master and they've only done something, 3, 4, 5 years. If I think someone's a master in something, I'm expecting them to be doing an absolute master of it 20, 30 years or even longer, and in certain disciplines. And this is where we are in a situation where we're all we're evolving, right? And we can become more masters of certain things, but we have to master things within ourselves as guide. And even though, of course, a lot of guides are just helping people to explore, a lot of businesses that I've worked with, I've dabbled in lots of things themselves, or I've studied lots of things, but what their role is to help people explore different things to find what's right for them. So in that way, they don't have to be complete masters that they've mastered everything to 20, 30 years, but they're obviously going to be far more experienced, far more knowledgeable, and have far more insights than the people that we're supporting. A lot of people say, you only need to be 1 or 2 steps in front of your audience. In some cases, I would argue that I always think you should be a wee bit more in some circumstances. I think it depends what it is. But one of the things that we're seeing at the moment is the collective is evolving so quickly. There is many people that people would say were fast asleep in consciousness and spirituality and all sorts of things, and people that don't seem to know what's going on just because what they read, what they watch, and what they're aware of, and also who you're about. And that goes back to synchronicity. If you ask to be guided, you sometimes have people put in your life that are there to share information that you didn't know about. But one of the things about when other people present information, sometimes the cognitive dissonance, we're not ready for it, or we don't want to face the truth. And we see that as not truth because it doesn't suit. And it's like, if you go back to, there's a saying, it's a wee story kind of that they say where ask God, I'm looking for you, I'm asking for your help. And, is it the saying like somebody's kind of, they're stuck in a river and there's a boat, there's all these things happen to try and help the person, but they don't see it because they're looking for God. And it's the same as that on life. Sometimes we think that God guiding us has to be, we hear a wee voice and God's saying, right, Eileen, this is what you have to do today. And you want to see God or Jesus appear in front of you. It's almost as if he's handing you a piece of paper and a letter. It doesn't come that way, or you hear that voice. But you might have someone turn up at your door with a little message, and suddenly a wee envelope comes in, or you watch a little video, you see something, and you don't realise that actually the universe is presenting you with the synchronicity that is guiding you. So guidance is about us getting in alignment within ourselves and being able to be still enough and open enough. And if you think about when we're in a state of meditation, in a state of being, when you're in a state of meditation, you're not when you're in that point of beingness, you're not reactive to things, right? You have an ability to, you're not in that sort of judgment aspect, right? That you're judging everything, or you're reactive or responsive to everything. You're actually open-hearted to things, right? So when we are allowing more of the guide archetype within ourselves, it's coming from a state of beingness, it's coming from a state of stillness, and it's coming from a state of openness. Because even when you're asking help for someone to guide you, think about it, back to the travel guide. Like, if you're allowing a travel guide to take you to the best places, you're having to trust them. You have to be open that they're going to take you to places that are exciting, and be open to an adventure. If you're not open to adventure, and you're someone that is used to controlling your life and controlling every aspect of your life, you may find it very difficult for yourself to be guided and to trust your guidance, because you're about control, or the universe to guide you. And I see this in people who, for example, you see it with people that have OCD. They are very left brains, my brain's a wee bit today, but you know, everything they do has to be organized, everything has to be organized, everyone is a sense of control, everyone has to be set in a way. They struggle with their creative and their feminine flow. They're actually stuck in their masculine. I actually picked this up when there's healers or therapists I work with, and most are quite strong in their feminine, but I do have people that I know that they can't maybe sense it, but I can sense it, they're very stuck in their masculine. They can be very rebellious, really struggle with certain emotions. It's because they're disconnected for the feminine flow, the intuitive flow, and they use logic and control and organization to control their life, to make them feel as if they have control over things. And there's other things going on, but that can make, and sometimes they're a bit of a lone wolves in relation to, and it's the lone wolves because they're controlling relationships. They're very fearful of relationships, and they're not open to things, and they have fixed ideas, right? And when you get fixed ideas about everything, you cannot open yourself up as much to synchronicity and guidance. You take everything sometimes as gospel, what you see and you read, and you don't have objectivity, right? So you may be, there's a difference being intuitive and controlling, and I sometimes see this with students who take everything literally, and will do a course, but they'll not do any self-inquiry, and they struggle. When you ask them to do self-inquiry, they kind of almost don't really know what that is, or they struggle to think out the box and see beyond what you're actually saying, or have the realization that maybe what they read in the book was just someone's belief or someone's theory or someone else's study. And it's when you think about it's like there's a lot of studies out there. For example, you just look at science, but they're very biased studies. They're not actually open. And someone that maybe is very that way thinking sometimes can't always see, right? And then they'll struggle with another idea, because what it means is almost underneath, they feel as if it kind of almost, their identity, that kind of shakes up their identity too much. When the reality is there's flow, there's change. Think science, for example, science is constantly evolving and changing in relation to what we understand. So what might be truth one year, we discover is not truth the next year, because actually we've made a new realization that what they thought was something else behind them. And when you can understand that even from a spiritual perspective and see things as layers, and that guidance is we're going along a path and it might be more unveiling all the time, you let go of the ego. So guidance is that we can support people to our best of our ability, and we can be guided by ourselves, but sometimes also along a path we're not ready for all the layers. to be taken off. It's like sometimes we're not ready for the bandages to be pulled off. And that God, and I believe Spirit, is preparing us. I think about lots of things that I know now and experiences I've had and things that I believe now that I would never even have imagined ever believing. It was so far away from my level of consciousness. It was so far away of the way I was brought up in my own world. But my life experiences, what I saw, what I felt, what I've saw, and so not just in my own life, but in other people's lives, and becoming more open, having new experiences and being guided by other people in ways that I never imagined has helped me almost pull back all the layers. But I don't think my nervous system, my mental system could have coped with that pulling off. But the reality is there is many people right now who are actually facing to pull off. They're getting the band-aid pulled off right away. They're almost being going about with complete blinkers, and the band-aid's getting pulled off right now. Now that soul's obviously decided to experience that. My soul was going through layers and layers and layers over what the last 40 or 35 years. And many of us in the healing community, that's what we've experienced. But there's lots of healers I do know that don't seem to know anything. They seem to be very switched off, and that's their soul's path. And now it's almost like lots of things. It's like they're getting what some of us got over 30 years. They're getting in a couple of weeks, and they're having to step up quickly. But they need the support and guidance from people. So we're all here for different reasons. We're all different types of guides. And going back to this, this relates to two cards that I took out in relation to Colette Van Reed's. And it was the Bone Collector. Now, the Bone Collector is always when I'm just going to look at it from more an image. The Bone Collector, and this was kind of, it was upside down when I brought it out. But the Bone Collector is often from the wisdom. If you think about, to me, it's like the old woman, the sage, the crone, this where they have reached their old life and they've got to a point and maybe not have their teeth and they've lost a lot of things, but they're sitting in they're kind of happy and they're content and they've been able to let go of anything that's not important, but they've gathered so much rich wisdom and life experience that is remarkable and that brings us depths, right? Now, when it's upright, is that you're looking closely where you're not fully present, right? But reverse is about where is life repeating, where you haven't learned the lessons that are inherent in an original situation, right? And lots of people are faced with that right now because our life paths keep repeating. And right now, with so many shifts in the collective, we've been asked to guide ourselves back in and look at what major things are showing up. Where are we being guided to look at? Where are we being guided to look at in our life, or relationships, or business, or even in the collective that is showing up that needs to be healed? What is the wisdom in our past? Even what is in the wisdom, even in our ancestors, what has been repeated from our ancestors, right? Now, it says the information you seek lies in your history. Familiarity in this case isn't an invitation to dance the old dance. Once again, instead, it's a call to retreat and choose differently. The Bone Collector had a message: if you do what you did, you'll always get what you get. Her warning is delivered with kindness, for she has deep love and respect for you. She will protect you. And the universe has a way of repeating cycles that has to be learned. But it also has, the universe also has people show up in life, circumstances in the collective and in the universe, for us to see things differently where we have not saw or we've not wanted to look at. So If there is something that you're in real resistance about and you're really emotional or fearful, look at it. Is it how you're looking at it? Is it how you see the situation? What is the wisdom from that? Because a lot of suffering is not just about what's true, it's about what you believe about that. You believe about that. And what we're being shown right now in the collective is not everything is what it's seen or what has been presented, right? Now, the other card, which was upside down, was Spirit of Place. And this is all about don't get entangled in details or desires that obscure the truth of your situation. Step back and ask yourself, what is the real nature of my inquiry? So this is all about inner guidance. Even exquisitely seductive hidden agendas cannot conceal this. So what secret, seductive, hidden agendas do you have within yourself that you're trying to hold on to? Where are you fueling something because it suits your agenda, it suits your belief about a situation, it suits what you want, rather than what is it's better for your soul, better in the long term for yourself, or better for the collective, right? Trust your intuition. The Spirit of Place is whispering in your ear. You hold the power to tell the truth, first to yourself, then to the world. You can always distinguish between an essence that is true and one that is synthetic. And I talked about this recently, of recognizing the difference between a wound, a trigger, something that makes you fearful, something that makes you angry, something that makes you annoyed, is not necessarily intuition. It's often not. That's emotional reaction. That's emotional fear. And it's like what I'm saying, sometimes we get things taken away and we are angry and we think that's our intuition because it shouldn't have been taken away, or that's wrong. When actually the thing needs to be taken away, the thing needs to be changed, because that's right for what we need to experience at that point. And we have to be truthful with ourselves, what we're really feeling, what we're experienced, and what will have been triggered and where we're not, what is really triggering it. And, if we think about archetypes, sometimes it's also just what we think we're seeing or what we're sensing. So we have to be the guide within, be honest with ourselves, but also recognize when these archetypes are showing up, what is it there to teach us? Because archetypes in the collective are some of the biggest guides. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you would like to learn more about archetypes, I'm going to be sharing about a free course, one of my older courses, which I will be updating soon. And I'm also going to be sharing more about some of my archetypal courses. I also offer one-to-one support where we explore things like I can help you evolve with certain maybe blocks you have in your main archetype or your inner child, to support you through maybe something that's shown up for you. Thank you for watching. I wish you a beautiful day, a beautiful week. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share, just some engagement. As you'll understand, a lot of us, particularly a lot is, and that I know for me, I've had a lot of my channels, some shadow banning and all sorts of things happening. So just a little bit of a comment, or even asking me any questions or anything that you would like to see, would be deeply appreciated. And it's always good to know if you find this valuable. Okay, have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye-bye.